Okay, so before we start, because obviously we have a large number of people, it's not going to be. I'm going to have to mute. So give everybody just a quick lesson. By the way, that's my picture for those of you who may not have attended any of my trainings before. I just want to give you a little quick lesson on how you use the chat box. So what you're going to see on the top of your screen are these icons. You want to select the one, they're green. You want to select the one that looks like a cartoon bubble. This is just a picture of them. And I know a number of you figured it out already. And then what's going to happen is you're going to get a box that looks like this. Sometimes it's slightly different depending on what browser you're coming in on. And you want to type where it says type here. So to make sure that at least most of you figured that out, I'd like you to put in your name and where you're from. First names are fine, but just, where you're from, okay? And then I'll have a general sense that people get it. And then I may unmute for a second just to make sure. So as you can see, we have people from all over, not everywhere, but all over. Certainly there's a lot of folks from Florida. And I see I'm so glad we have some people from Greenville. It's one of my favorite places. I have a house in Panama City, and I travel through. So one of my favorite places to do yoga is in Greenville. It's called Southern Home. So it's located near the Whole Foods. I'm sure right now they're not open, but I highly recommend when you get a chance going. It's a terrific place. Anyway, I'm going to get started. It looks like everybody figured this out. One thing I've learned from doing these, it's best if I have fewer things running. So I'm going to actually shut off PowerPoint. And what I may do, because it's helpful for me, is I am going to ask you some mostly yes and no questions, so I make sure you're with me. I'll try to keep the questions brief because I realize you have to type and not everybody's adept at that. So first question, how many of you are generally familiar with Google Forms or have worked with them? Just a yes or no is fine. Oh, it looks like almost everybody. Well, some yes, some no. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go over some really basic things with Google Forms as an introduction, and then I'm going to try to just show you some creative uses. This is not necessarily just a primer on, how to create forms, but to think a little creatively about some of the things you can do with it. So the first thing is a lot of different ways you can access Google Forms. I generally recommend, if you can, using the Chrome browser. You're going to find most of the Google apps work better in the Chrome browser. They're kind of built for each other. Not critical, but especially with Google Forms, it's pretty forgiving. But I still recommend that. So you can, if you can't find an icon for it, you can always do a search on the web and just do Google Forms. And what's going to get loaded is this basic home screen for Google Forms. So the first thing you see is up top there are some samples, which you can certainly then modify. I don't even want to open them up because I want to start with some basic things. But I'm just going to show you how you would create the most basic form, even though I have one done already, and show you kind of a creative way of using it, okay? So first question. And I realize this is not a yes and no one, but how many of you take telephone messages for someone? Okay, So if you take messages to someone, including yourself, by the way, how do you take them? And what do you do with them? So do you, and I'll give you some choices here, do you take them on paper? Do you do them as an email? Do you have a notebook? Use a traditional message pad? How do you take them? Okay? And what I'd like to suggest is an alternative. Here are the common ones I hear. People do an old-fashioned paper message. Well, the problem with that is no one can really answer it until they get back. And with a lot of folks being out and about, they really have to come back at the end of the day and get their messages, assuming they don't lose them. Another option, of course, is to email, but people are so buried in email that really adding to the email morass by forwarding a telephone message may not be the best approach. So I want to suggest, by the way, using a whiteboard's good, okay? I want to suggest a Google Forms approach to this. So we're actually going to create a telephone message, even though I have one done already, because it'll give me a chance to show folks who are not familiar how you basically create a simple Google form. And then I'll show you how to pretty it up, okay? So what you're going to do, and this particular one, there's just a setting I need to adjust here that I do for mine, which is collect emails. You wouldn't necessarily need that. So we're just going to create the most basic form, and I realize for people who have some experience, I apologize, it's kind of really more basic than you need. But the first bit of advice is whenever you start any of the applications in Google, name them first, because otherwise you can be sitting on a whole series inside your drive called Untitled Document, Untitled Sheet, or Untitled Form. So it's always my habit and conduct to name first. So we're just going to call this fake telephone message. By the way, I'm very subconscious when people watch me type. And what you're going to notice is when you hit enter, it's going to change the name here to the same thing. Now, once it does that, you can actually change this to anything you want. So you don't have to have the names and the title of the document be the same, but it'll do that by default. So we're going to keep this really simple, just a basic telephone message, okay? So what's the first thing you typically want in a message? The name. Now, what you're going to notice is Google Forms is so smart, it assumes name is going to be a short answer. And by the way, here are all the possible types of form questions that you can create. If I have time, I'll go over some of them, not all of them, but at least ones I think are important for you to take a look at. But anyway, so that's how you're going to see name. It assumed it. The other thing, and it may not apply in every case, but title, organization, and phone number, and two more, just email address. And there's a reason I did the email address here and not up above, because I may not get it from everyone. And then the last one, message. And just to show you how smart it is, it sees message, it assumes it's a paragraph. Okay, so I now have created my form. It's not a very pretty form. It's, it's not beautiful, but there are a lot of ways you can, yes, no, I'm hitting the plus to do another one. If you look on the side, you'll notice there are plus. That's how you create another question. Okay, and by the way, you can reorder the questions. If you decided you wanted organization above title, you can switch them, okay? Anyway, so now we have our question. You always want to see what it really looks like. So if you go up top, and this is a preview, you can actually fill them out this way. Not how you're going to send them to other people, but if you want to fill a few out, that's what I'm going to do here. You're going to see this thing that looks like an eyeball. You're going to hit preview, and that's actually going to show you the form. Now, what it does is for each time you preview, it's going to put another tab in the browser. So this first tab, the one to the left, is actually the form. This is the input, okay? You can start to get a lot of them. I get a shortcut here because it'll probably remember me, okay? And we'll just say owner. And I'm not going to use I'm not going to do the phone message because we're just using this as a sample. Okay? Call me. And now I've created a message. I'm actually only going to create 2 because I don't want to have you spend the whole day watching me do ones. And we have a lot to do. Maybe in this case it's an internal, so I'm not going to do that. And I'll be boring. Call me. Okay, so now if we go back to my original question, you'll see that I have all the responses here. There were 2 responses. They were from me and John Doe and all the titles. But that's not really where this shines. One of the really great things about Google Forms is that it ports into, I'll answer that in a minute, Dawn. Okay, it ports into Google Sheets. So this is something you're only going to have to do once. It's going to ask you what do you want to call your spreadsheet. Normally, once you've created it, you don't have to do it again, okay? And so now it's going to create, it's actually going to take me into Google Sheets. While this is not a training in Google Sheets, inevitably, for a lot of the stuff I'm going to show you today, we're going to be looking at Google Sheets. Okay, so there's a couple things you're going to notice. Typically in a phone message, I put the date and time, but I don't have to worry about that because they get time-stamped automatically, okay? And what you're going to see here is that each one of these questions shows up as a column. So each message is a row, and they're just going to show up as a column. Now, what you can do is we can create an additional column here. That because what I'm going to emphasize here is you share not the messages, you share the sheet. Okay? So maybe this is a comment between boss and office staff. Okay? Now I'll just say comment. And then what's going to happen is maybe as we interact with each other, the boss will say, tell him I died. Actually, I shouldn't even make jokes about that today. Tell him, I moved to Tahiti. You get what I'm saying. We can actually have communication. Give him a call. Tell him I'll call him tomorrow. So I only have one more thing to show you with this, a couple things quick, that are really more in Google Sheets, because if you don't know this, it's not really going to be helpful. So what you're going to do is you're going to share the sheet. Now, I'm only going to share with myself, otherwise I'm going to have some client calling me up and saying, what's going on here? So I'm just going to share with one of my other email accounts, because I have to share with each at least one person to show you what can happen here. So once I've shared, okay? All right, so let me finish what I'm doing, then I'll try to answer all your questions, okay? So once I've shared, now if a supervisor, administrator, manager, they don't look at the messages, they only look at the sheet. And then what we do is when some item has been resolved, and you can have your own rules about this, you can put, one of the things is strike through. You can decide you're going to strike through the whole line, or just strike through the timestamp. But that's just some message that we've resolved the item, okay? So common questions I get asked. One of the questions is every time a new message comes, does that send a message to the boss? And the answer is, and you don't want that, because if you had that, it would almost defeat the whole purpose of this. You may as well sound emails. But from time to time, if you got somebody that's not looking at their messages, is there a way to remind them that there's like a lot of them? And the answer is yes. You actually have two options. So one option is under File to go to Email Collaborators. Now here we only have one collaborator, so this is just another tip on Google in general. But I could then send a message to the person saying, hey, you have a lot of messages. And what they're going to get is an email with the link to this sheet, then they can review them. So that's one option. The other option is, what if this particular message, and this is kind of not an exciting message, was like a 4-alarm fire message, and you want to make sure that that person got that message immediately. Here's a little trick a lot of people don't know. You can assign an item, and I'm gonna do more of that tomorrow with all of you, but you can actually assign an item. So what you have to do is you have to go to Messages, okay? You have to go to Message, Comments, and then if you hit the plus sign, it allows you to assign it to someone. And you can then write, additionally, you can write, better take care of this immediately. And that's going to send them a message, but it's not going to send them a message just to the whole sheet. It's going to send them a message that takes them exactly to where the cell where you told them to look. There are a lot of other uses for that, but between those two, that's a good way to communicate, okay? So I'm going to shut this down, and I'm going to shut the input down, and I'm going to answer your, actually, I just got rid of the question. Let me open it up again. I've been known to do that. Okay. So there were two responses. And once again, if I just click here, it's just going to take me right into the sheet. So I don't have to go and rename it again. Okay. All right, to answer, I'll see if I can answer everybody's questions. Okay, how do you hit preview? Up top, where you see these icons near send, you want to use the one that looks like an eyeball. Okay? And that's how you initiate a preview. To actually send the form to someone, you would then use the send. You can send it by putting their email in here, or you can copy a link. I like to shorten it. And then you can put it in Gmail or email. And the answer is Tony. Sending an assignment will send an email. What's really cool, though, is it sends an email to that cell, not just to the whole sheet. So it's really, if you want to make sure the person actually sees it, they're going to see it better with an assigning. And when I do the project one, I'm going to show you a little bit more how that could be used as a management tool. But for today, either one, email collaborators will send an email. Just one sends you to the top of the sheet, the other sends you to that cell. Okay, how do you keep the formatting? Anything you do to the, like if you select wrapping text, that formatting will then apply to the new lines, provided you highlighted those cells. I would not recommend adding columns in between. So like here, if we're porting the message, I wouldn't recommend, say, adding a column between title and phone. But you can add as many columns as you want beyond the form, okay? And those are usable. And what's just going to happen is each one happens, it's just going to populate, okay? By the way, if you just erase them, you're going to end up with blank lines if you get new items. But if you delete the rows, it'll then, as it populates, add them in the proper order. So I generally recommend not just deleting the content if you want to get rid of some of them, but getting rid of the rows. Okay. Let me stop. Any questions? I know I spent a lot of time on that, but now that we've learned how you do this whole collaborative thing, then I can show you some other really creative forms that I've already created already. Okay? All right. Okay. So here's a form, and again, the purpose here is not necessarily just to give a lesson on Google Forms, but to give you some creative things that you can do. So I had planned to, but I'm really running a little short on time, to show you how to put a form on your phone. If I have a chance, maybe I'll do that in one of the other sessions. I'll squeeze a few minutes. But you can actually take a form, which is a link, and if you send it to yourself as an email, you can then assign it to your phone as a widget. So a lot of people, for example, when they're filling out these telephone messages, they're not really filling them out on the computer, they're filling them out on their phone, which is actually really kind of cool, because maybe you're in the middle of work and the phone rings, you don't want to, go out of whatever you're working on, so you just grab for your phone and put the message in your phone. Which brings me to my next, and I'm going to spend most of the time showing you creative uses here. So here's one I really like, and it's so simple, same idea. Okay, note to self. Okay, so I just put a little pretty image on it, but essentially it's a note to self. So I'm going to ask a question. So how many of you are walking down the hallway, or you're at a meeting, or you're in the middle of doing something, and you get a quick call from who knows, from your boss, from key people you contact, asking you for something, okay? So where do you put that information when they make the request? If you're working for a town and the mayor calls and says, can you get me that number? Or if you're working and, one of the principals asks you for something, like, where do you put it? What do you do with it now so that you don't misplace it, okay? So I'll wait to see if I get any responses to make sure you're still alive. Okay. All right, so at least I get an okay. That'll work. All right, so note. Okay, and by the way, you can do that note sections. You can put a sticky note. You can do all that, okay? But I actually like creating a form for this and having that form on my phone as a widget, okay? So, yes, I could put it in my notes, but I think this is much better, okay? So I created a form. It's a very basic form. I'm just going to show it to you, okay? I'll show you what it looks like first, and then I'll just show you the design. Okay, so it just says memo to self. I have a list of all the most common people I talk to. By the way, the one that's missing from here is myself, because maybe I want to remind myself to pick up milk, okay? So what I can do is I just put the person down, and then I would write, and I submit it, and I don't worry about it, okay? As I said, I don't have time today to show you how to do it. I'm going to try to steal away some time when I do the Google Docs one to do it. But if you actually look, by the way, Diane, iPhone or Android? Because it depends. They're a little bit different. Okay? I'll find the time some point to do that. Okay? And again, another one. And then I just submit it. Okay? And then maybe it's somebody who I don't normally no, it doesn't go to an email. It ports to the sheet. Okay? Which is what makes this so beautiful. Okay? So here's one. I have self. Okay? Pick up toilet paper. If you can find it. Yesterday I went to not that I have any shortage of toilet paper. I'm somewhat of a pack rat. But, yes, I can do that for the iPhone. I don't have an Android, so I can't do it. I can tell you it's extremely easy. I set someone up. So look on the web. but I can show because I don't have an Android phone. But I have done it. It's very easy. Okay? You just have to make sure you open the browser. Okay? All right. So now I just have a few messages, notes to self. So now, again, ports to a spreadsheet. I probably had one already. And here's all my messages. So when I get back to my office, I have all the messages, who they're from and what it is. And so therefore I then can deal with them and treat it like any other to-do list. But I don't have to worry about them because I know they're all going to port into my memo to self. Okay? So I have one that I didn't create today, but I'm just going to share with you. I work with a director of facilities. And I think this applies good for a transportation director or a business manager. So he has two of these. He has a memo to self. He also has one that anything he sees in a building that he thinks is a concern. So if he walks into the building and he sees maybe a cracked tile or a ceiling tile with water damage, he has a little form that basically has the location of the building, the room, and what the item is. And then what happens is he gets back to his office, he takes all these items, okay? He takes all these items, and then he assigns them to the appropriate staff person. But what he told me before that is he used to, he used to have like little pieces of paper he put in his pocket, and then half the time he misplaced them, okay? So I just wanted to suggest those are two. I think one of the assumptions people make about Google Forms is, most forms are they're like what I sent to you. It's a survey or it's something out to other people. What I've now showed you is two forms you fill out for yourself, okay? So I want you to just think about the notion of Google Forms just being a little bit better than your regular messages, principally because it puts them into a spreadsheet. And at that point, you have the ability to sort them and do all the cool things you can do with a spreadsheet. Okay, so I have some other forms to show you. All right, so I don't know if the folks showed up today, but I know some of the folks who were registered were in transportation. Okay, so this is just a draft. I have to admit it's not complete. But one of the things that we're looking at is the possibility of having the bus drivers pre-trip their buses in the morning instead of with a paper form, doing it with a Google form, okay? And again, I'm just going to show you the preview of this form, okay? So they have, and I'm not even going to fill it out because it's not necessary. I think you get the idea. So we have the bus number, the starting mileage, ending mileage, and then they ought to check off what the situation is. And presumably there won't be any items. If there is an item, then it actually notice I'm not going over all the details. It will not let you complete this form unless you fill out every single box. Okay? Because it's an inspection. It's either right or it's not. Okay? So they have to do all of them. Okay? And I think you get the general idea. I'm going to complete it, okay, to make a point. Now, let's assume that our regulations say you're supposed to do this pre-tripping in the morning. And, I'm not saying people would really do this, but in theory, but let's say somebody forgets to do their pre-trip. They know they have to fill out the form, so they fill it out like later in the day, okay, or they do it in the afternoon. Won't work because it time stamps them. So I know exactly when it was done. And you can't rig the timestamps. So as a result, I now have evidence that it was done. Okay, now I'm the first one to say this may not be the format you like for your record keeping, even though you have a record of it, but bear in mind, you also can pull them as individual responses. We actually selected individual. There's only one. That's the reason why I can't do more than one. but you can actually have them as individual responses. And I can actually print them. So here's this particular inspection, because maybe I want to keep that even though I want to keep a paper or physical copy. Or maybe I want to leave it here, but if I ever have auditors, and yes, that form could be filled out via either Android or iPhone, any phone with a browser, or an iPad. So yes, I could have it. Most drivers have them today. I could have a person completing their inspection on their phone. Okay? All right. Along those same lines, I just want to show you another inspection form. Yes. So I'm going to give you a little background on this one. Let's see if I can find it. And I thought I had it here, but I'll definitely find it. It's got to be, I kind of tried to get them all close. Okay, here it is. It's actually from a district, okay? So you'll see the logo on it. But I don't think that's a big deal. So let me just give you a little background on this. I apologize if I get chatty, but I kind of have to explain. So I was doing some work with Chappaqua, Joe Gramonda, great guy, and we wanted to do some inspections of walkthroughs through the building, which is not an unusual thing for districts to do. In this particular case, we did the walkthrough. We took all the maintenance staff through because we really wanted to raise their consciousness to become more observant around the building. It wasn't about judging. It was really more about raising consciousness. So we all shuffled off to the building at 7 a.m. because I wanted to be able to get into some classrooms. And when we initially did this, because I'm very good at Excel, as you're going to see later today for those of you who are, I had set it up as an Excel spreadsheet with drop-downs with all the different kinds of items. And it turned out to be a nightmare because walking through a building holding onto a laptop really did not work well. I kept having to find a spot to lean over to. So after a while, I thought about it, and I said, there's got to be a better way. Maybe I'll do it through Google Forms, because the information is going to port into a spreadsheet anyway, and once we get all the information, I can always sort it on the back end. So I created this walkthrough form. And again, I will tell you, we did these on our phones. Highly recommend for these forms, you put the widget on your phone. By the way, if you can't figure out how to do a widget, you can send yourself an email and click the link, okay? It's just nice to have the widget there all the time, but you actually, in theory, don't have to have a widget for this. You could just have the sent form, and you just open up the link, okay? All right, and you just need to make sure you have internet access, but that's usually not as big a deal, okay? So I'm going to take you through this form, show you what it's like. So these are just the buildings. I'm picking a building. We realized later we didn't really need the building because we were doing all of them. We were going to create a different form for that. So here we have different areas that it could be. It could be a general maintenance, a bathroom, custodial, long-term issue, or other. Always good to have an other because no matter how many things you do, you never know. So what I'm just going to do is take you through what happens. So if you select general maintenance, it's going to take you to a section in your form on general maintenance. What a lot of people don't know is you can actually have forms that will do a decision tree based on a multiple choice question. So based on any multiple choice question, depending on what response you give, it'll take you to a different section. So you can create almost like a hyperlink, well, tree is the right word, a tree based on the result. So here it takes me to general maintenance. My recommendation is name them the same, so this way you'll easily can find it. And now under general maintenance, I have all of these items. So now this question is a drop-down question rather than multiple choice because it would just be too big for multiple choice, okay? And so let's say it's a mixed ceiling tile, and then if there is another comment, and then who do I want to assign it to? And now it's been submitted, okay? So I'm just going to take you through all of them. I'm not going to fill out the locations. So now if I do bathroom, it takes me to bathroom questions. These are things that are broken in the bathroom. So it's a different drop-down, okay? And then again, I might have a comment. Maybe that's going to the, because it's routine, it's going to the senior custodian. And I'll just show you all of them, okay? So if it's a custodial item, it takes me to the custodial section, and then I have common cleaning issues. I don't have as big a list here. And there's always room for another, okay? And that goes to the head custodian, okay? So now, like we've seen with all these forms, once I get my responses, they can port to a spreadsheet, and now I can sort them by building, by location, by staff, and I actually, using the little plus thing, I can assign the item actually to the maintenance mechanic or the head custodian for the building, which is what this director does. He sorts the items and then he sends a little assignment, look into it, let me know what's going on with that, okay? So again, we've looked at a transportation inspection, we've looked at, possibly doing a, doing a walkthrough, okay? So I'm just going to show you a couple of other creative uses. All right, so this is, I know we have some teachers. Yes, or you could, you could assign a comment to more than one person. So you're not limited to only assigning it to one. So for example, if this was, and this is, we're not in there, but let's assume we were, and I'll show you that tomorrow, we were in Google Docs, and you had a team, and maybe had like a to-do list for or action items, and there were 3 people on that little subcommittee, you could assign it to all 3, okay? You absolutely could do that, okay? So you're not limited to one assignment per person. And you could, you could have a sheet with 5 assignments. So one of the things I like about doing it in spreadsheet form, if you're going to do that, is you just have to click the cell. If you do it in Docs, you're going to have to highlight what you want to assign. So it's not terrible, but it's usually a little bit easier for assigning to do it because of the cell nature of sheets. But it works in both, okay? All right, so here's I wanted to, I don't generally do a lot of work with classrooms, but I was thinking of something you might be able to use in the classroom or something that you could use for your team. So I'm going to give you a little background on this. So back in the, oh God, I don't even want to date myself, back a long time ago, let's just say that, okay? There were a couple of companies out there producing products that would allow employees to give you anonymous responses. So let's say you were like CEO of the company and you wanted to get feedback from your staff and everybody was way too afraid to tell you, okay? They had these little clickers where you could ask a question like, how do you think I'm doing on this? And people could just secretly write their answers, and then it would come up on a board. I think it was about 10 grand for this setup back then. So I want to show you how you could do that in Google Forms, okay? Because unless you ask people to give their name, the responses are anonymous, okay? So I created this little anonymous form, okay? This is actually the sheet. What I want to do is show you the form, okay? And then we'll get to the sheet after. Okay. So here's my little anonymous voting form. And by the way, it doesn't have to be voting. It also could be questions you're asking your class, okay? And maybe you want to keep them general. So as you're doing the questions in class, we can ask people to vote. In fact, you could have the thing being just one question, okay? You know, and you just keep using it over and over again, okay? So, and I didn't put any labels on these questions. What the question is, it could be, how do I would recommend you have to dial in. That's the only way you're going to get my voice. Let me tell it. Okay, anyway, I apologize for that. Okay? All right, so let's say I'm just going to answer these questions. I got to remember to. And I just made it cute. You can put images in a form. And then this is just drab boring, but it works. Same thing. Okay, and now, it's not what I wanted to do. I want to go back to the form again. Because it's easier for me to find it. I could have just pulled the sheet from Sheets. Okay, so these are all the answers to questions. I did a few this morning. I think I did one last night. Okay, so I'm not going to go over all the formulas. I gave them here, but it's going to give you responses as yes and no, and using a little creative formula that I will go over in one of the Excel tips and tricks sessions, I can actually then convert these to counted numbers, and then I can calculate percents. So I now have all my responses. So how many of you thought I did a good job on this? Oh, 40 of you yes, 20 no. So I'm doing pretty good. So, and each question shows up as a different column, okay? So again, another interesting use, surveying people anonymously within a group, okay? Or just even in the classroom, instead of having students raise their hands, having them fill this out on their Chromebooks, and we'll just get yes and no answers, okay? All right, so we still have a little bit of time left. What I want to show you is, this is probably more just showing you how to make forms more aesthetically appealing and show you some of the capabilities. So I'm going to show you this quick form, and then what I'm going to do with the rest of the time is just take you through, if we have time, the different types of questions. I know I'm trying to do a couple things at once, kind of give a general lesson on Google Forms and also give you ideas for how to use it, okay? But I like this, not because it's so deep, but because it's aesthetically pleasing. And one of the criticism of Google Forms is if you're not creative, they're kind of boring, okay? And they don't have to be boring, okay? So here's my little form. I've got a beautiful little banner up top. What's your name? And then what's my lunch choice? What do I want? Okay, and then I've got a beautiful picture of, soup, salad, and sandwich, all my choices. So I'm going to select sandwich, and it's going to take me to the sandwich section. And then I have choices. What do I want? Ham, turkey, veggie. I mean, I could have more. And then what do I want on it? And notice, instead of just having a list, I've got beautiful little pictures. And then what kind of bread? I guess I could have put pictures of the bread too, but I didn't do that. Okay. All right. So I'm going to just show you all the choices here. Okay. So if I now select soup, it's going to take me to the soup section. And then I have a choice of pea soup or noodle soup. I don't think I put bread in this one. I kind of messed that up. Okay? And then we'll go to salad. And then I have my salad dressings. Do I want bread? Okay, and I can submit those. And then I don't even think I have to show you what happens with this. It's going to get ported into a spreadsheet with all the answers. Okay. To answer you on how you get the forms onto your iPhone, I'm going to try to describe it. I will, when I start the next Google session, I will show you a little video on it. I believe I created it, but I don't remember. This morning was a little hectic. I'm going to see if I can find it. If I can't, I'll have to show it to you next time. Okay? So I'm going to see. Yeah, actually, let me look one more place. And that'll give me time between now and tomorrow to get it together. I do have a clip on how to do it. And my apologies for not being ready with that. Let's see if it's this one. Yep, I got it. Okay, so I can show it to you. All right, so what you're going to do, I'll kind of walk you through what you do. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to send the form to yourself. So first we're going to go into this. And as we saw, you can send a form. You could put your email address here, or you could copy the link into Outlook or Gmail or anything. So you're going to send it to whatever email address you have access to on your phone. Okay? One thing I will say, if you're using a district email, you may have to go into your settings. You're not going to see it here because this is a personal one, but you may have to unclick a button that says it'll allow to be viewed by people outside of your operation. Because for a lot of districts, if you send a form and you send it to anybody outside, they have to be able to, it has to be like Rosalind or an Okeechobee email address. If you unclick that, you can send it to the public, you can send it to yourself. So just watch out because that can be a pain. But other than that, what's going to happen is it's just going to show up as an email with a link. And by the way, you could click that link to get access to the form. That would work, okay? But what you want to do is once you've got that link, and this is just an email, okay? When you do that, you're going to open the form. And then what you're going to do is on the bottom, you're going to see a little icon in your iPhone on the bottom. And it's if you look on the right side, this is an iPhone. It looks like a little box with a up arrow. That's the upload box, okay? And you're going to see that when you load the form. You can actually create a widget with any address, any web address, okay? And when you do that, you're going to get one of the choices is going to be add to home screen. Now, it is possible in some cases you may not see that. You may have to go over to the end and select dot and move it over. But you want it to add it to your home screen. When you do that, it's going to create a widget that looks like this. Now, I wish you could change the color of them, because if you got a couple of them, they're all going to look blue. My recommendation to people is put them on a different screen on your phone. But it's going to show up looking like this. And then anytime you want access to the form, you simply click that. By the way, you can do the same thing to create access to your district website or any web address, okay, including one of these forms. Okay, so I covered that. Any questions on that? I can send this to you guys. I'll do it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do the recording. I'll put I'll put a copy of this or a link to this in the recording information. It's pretty much the same with the Android. Once you open it, it's actually even easier in the Android. I just don't have one to be able to screen capture, but I did one for somebody recently. It was a breeze. Okay? So you'll figure it out. Okay? Let's go back. We got a couple of minutes left. Okay, so I got about 5 minutes left. I just want to walk you through some of the most common questions, okay, that you might see in a form. So I used to call it mishmash, because it's all these crazy different questions nobody would ever put together. I think it's this one. It's actually not. Hold on. Actually, you know what? I can start it from scratch. There's no advantage to not doing it from scratch. Okay. And I may go over about 5 minutes. We start about 5 after the hour. If that's okay with folks. If you have to go, I understand. But Michelle, I'm going to be pushing the recording out to everybody as a link. It'll be on YouTube, like as an unlisted video. And I'm going to put them all in there. I'm not going to send them out. It's easier for me when I finish this whole week of stuff to just put them all in there, depending on whether you attended that one or not. You'll get it if you register for anyone. Okay. All right. So we went over the first basic types of questions. Short answer. That's a one line. Paragraph would be like an address. Multiple lines. I think we even looked at multiple choice. Okay. So I just want to show you something about multiple choice, drop down, and checkbox, because they're all similar. So first of all, any multiple choice question is going to have circles, just a syntax. So one of the natures of a multiple choice question, you can only choose one. So if you choose apple, you can't choose oranges. That's a multiple choice question, okay? And by the way, you can change these on a dime because this format's the same. Okay, so the difference between a multiple choice and a drop-down, they work exactly the same. So what's the difference? So there's a couple of small differences. You can't have an other with a drop-down. The advantage with a drop-down is you can have a very, very large list without having like this enormously obnoxious form. So if I had done, say, a form and I used listing what state you were from, and I used a multiple choice question, it'd be completely ridiculous. Yet if I had it as a drop down, it would be fine. So generally if it's 2 or 3 items, multiple choice is fine. I'm not even sure what you mean by that. Okay. By rankings and the answers. You have to elaborate a little bit more. I'm not really sure. Okay. I mean, I can sort, but I'm not sure. Maybe. What I would probably do is I'll show you. Okay. How I wouldn't use this format. Okay, I'd use a different kind of question. So now let's go to checkbox. So checkbox and multiple choice look exactly the same. The one difference is checkbox, you can have more than one selected. So it's still not first and second and third choice. It's just, more than one selected. Okay? Got it? So that's the difference. Okay? Now, I may actually have something better for you. Okay? So we're going to continue moving on. Let's do linear scale. And this is, again, how's the bathroom? Stinky. Wonderful. Now here it has a scale of 1 to 5, but I'm not limited to 1 to 5. I can't do more than 10, but I can do 1 to 5. I could do 1 to 8. So I'll just leave it at 1 to 5 and just show you what it looks like. So it just looks like that, okay? I would suggest, all right, let me just tell her. Okay, so that's I should probably get rid of a few of these. All right, so that's linear scale. I'm almost done. So this next one might be the one to, I'm trying to think who asked the question, Deborah's question. Okay, might work well for what you were talking about. Okay, so here, I also might ask bathroom. I don't know. Soap. Okay, so I just want to show you what the question looks like. So it goes like this. Okay, so the reason I'm saying, Deborah, that might work, okay, so as you see, they might be able to select that, okay? Right. So that is another way that you could do first, second, and third choices, okay? All right. So I'm almost done. I'm trying to keep to my promise on the time. So this is a fairly new one. It's Checkbox Grid. So it looks the same as multiple choice, but you have the ability to select more than one option. So this makes absolutely no sense for the example here, but I'm going to show you one where it does, okay? And I only know about it because I'm creating something for my, as old as I'm, actually, believe it or not, do karate. And so one of the things that came up was we're trying to do everything now online. So they're trying to set up practice sessions for everyone. Oh, I totally understand, because we're going to end in a minute anyway, if you need to go. So I created this form where you can select what times you're available. So multiple choice wouldn't work because then it wouldn't let me pick more than one per row. So here, multiple choice checkbox works good. And then that's going to get submitted, and then they can sort and decide when to schedule people. Okay? So it's pretty good for, like, scheduling appointments. Last thing, and then we're done. I mean, I feel like I covered a lot in a little bit of time. and broke my own rule of not titling this. Okay. All right. So I'm just going to quickly go over. They recently added file upload. I highly, I have some issues with it. I certainly think it's okay to use internally. I would not want to use it externally beyond my own organization, because you're literally letting people send a form that's some document. It could be a virus-based document, although they tend to scan them pretty good. You know, it could be a problematic document. So my general recommendation is, if you're going to do uploads, only do it internally. So, for example, if you wanted to have people upload budget information or attendance sheets or something, and it's internal, I think it's fine. Okay? And it even gives you a warning when you do it. I will tell you, what it does if you let people upload is it actually creates a folder in your Google Drive named the same as the form. Okay? So be aware of your form names. Now, what you can do, which is kind of good here, is you can limit the type of thing you want. So if you're only going to permit a PDF, you can allow that, and you can limit the size of the document. So again, my recommendation is only internally, and I would put some limitations on what people can upload, okay? And the way that's going to show up is as an add file, and they'll be able to then drop and drag the file. So, but I do not recommend it with the public. You know, even though we might be tempted to want to have people submit, you know, permission slips and things like that, I don't really recommend it. Maybe with vendors, some documents, maybe employee reimbursements, that might work, but I wouldn't want to, I like to keep it internal, okay? And the only other ones, which are really so basic, you don't even need a lesson on them, are just date and time. If you do this with the Chrome, if you set up a date and the person uses the Chrome browser, they will be able to use it either way. But if they use a Chrome browser, they'll be able to give you a date picker. If they don't use a Chrome browser, they'll just get the regular date. Okay? All right. I don't know about you, but I'm tired. I think we covered a lot. So I know I have some folks coming back in an hour. I need to rest my voice. And yet, just to give you back on what's going to happen, I tell people don't worry about this, because I record them all. What I'm just going to do is when I'm going to upload them to a playlist in YouTube. They'll be unlisted, so if you do a general search, you won't find them. But I'm going to send everybody who signed up to any session a link to all of them, and you know you can view them at your leisure. Because I know for some of this stuff, you know, you'll see it now. When you come to use it, you may want to review it again. And just a little tip, sometimes I even review my old ones when I have to prep for something new. So for those of you coming in the next hour, I'll see you in the next hour. I don't want to say 1 o'clock because that's Eastern time. Whatever an hour is from where you are. And thanks again. Okay?